Hi guys, welcome back to this series on interest and depreciation. In this video we're going to be looking at examples on the topic of simple interest. So we're going to be going through New Century Maths Advanced Textbook exercise 2.03 for simple interest. We're going to be looking at questions 6, 9 and 15. So with that said, let's get into it. Okay, so the first question we got, question 6, is the interest on a loan of $2,500 over 4 years is $450. Calculate the flat rate of interest per annum. Okay, so there's a couple of things to remember here. Remember, per annum means per year, and usually when we see the flat rate, it's generally referring to simple interest. So what it's saying up here is the total interest of the loan, not the initial principal. So they're getting interest. They want us to find what the interest is on a principal amount of $2,500. Okay, so immediately I'm going to write down my simple interest formula, which is going to be I for interest equals PRN. Remember, P standing for principal, so the initial amount, which I can see up here is $2,500. My rate, which is going to be how expensive it is to borrow, and that is the variable that we do not know because we're trying to calculate the flat rate, so we don't know that one yet. Our N is our number of time periods, and up here I can see it's 4 years, and remember we don't need to change that because it's already in per annum, meaning per year. So we've got 4 years and our rates in years, so that's all good. And we can see that we already have our interest, which is going to be $450. So what we're doing is we're trying to work backwards to try and get what our rate is. So we're going to need to do a little bit of algebra. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to substitute all the information that we know. So looking at my I, that's going to be my total interest, which we know is $450. The principal, which was the initial amount that was loaned out, is $2,500. The rate is the thing we don't know, so we're going to just put a question mark there, but you can put whatever letter you want. And our N, which is our number of periods, which is going to be 4. We don't need to change it again because both of these are in per annum. So when we have an algebraic equation, which just means that we've got a variable that we're trying to solve, the first thing we want to generally try and do is, after simplifying, we want to try and make this the subject of the formula, or in other words, to try and get this all by itself and everything else on the other side of it. So I know that I can simplify this side of the equation first, because this 2,500 times 4, both like terms, so I'm allowed to go through and do them. So that's going to give me 10,000 times whatever the rate is, we don't know the rate yet, is going to be equal to 450. And now, in order to get this by itself, remember when we have an algebra equation, we're trying to make this the subject, we want to do the opposite to try and make sure that we get this by itself. So right now I can see that this unknown is being times by 10,000. So to do the opposite would mean I divide both sides by 10,000. So remember, we have to do this on both sides so that it remains an equation equal, because we've got to treat both sides equally. So when I do that, I can see here that I've got now 10,000 over 10,000 times question mark over 1, which means that I can simply cross this out because it's the same thing as 1. And 1 times whatever this rate is the same thing as just the rate. So we can simply take this all away. So now that this rate is all by itself, I can simply get what it is by taking this. Now remember, this is going to be in decimal form, so we will then have to transfer it into its percentage form. Now you could put this into your calculator, but remember, if you're dividing by a multiple of 10, so a 1 with a whole lot of zeros after it, remember, if you're dividing, you can simply move the decimal place this way for as many zeros as there are. So in this case, we can move it that way by 4, and if you were going to multiply, which we're not doing, it's the same thing, except you move the decimal point the other way. So in this case, we have 450.0, and we're trying to move this decimal place 4 places. So we got 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to put my decimal place there and fill in the empty with a 0. And what I'm left with is 0.045 as my interest rate in decimal form. So to get this in percentage form, remember this percent means it's something over 100. So whatever this is up here is going to be your percentage form. So you could simply, yes, times both sides by 100. So remember, this is going to cross out, and timesing this by 100. Now that we're timesing, we move it the decimal place 2 this way because we've got 2 zeros, and we see 1, 2, that we get 4.5%. So this is the same thing, but in decimal form of our percent over here. So the interest rate that the person borrowed it out at was 4.5%. So question 9. For how many years will $4,200 need to be invested to earn $200 interest if the interest rate is 2.5%? So now we're going to immediately write down our simple interest formula, which is going to be equals PRN. So we should be starting to get the hang of this. Do we have our interest rate already? Yes, we know it's 2.5 per annum, and we're trying to find our years, so we don't need to change that. So that's all good. So we're going to put, you can see here that I have my total interest, which is going to be $200. So we're trying to know how long we need to earn that $200. If we have a principal, so our initial amount of $4,200, our rate of 2.5%, and then our number is our unknown this time. Now, do we need to change this interest rate? Well, it's in per annum, which means per year, and we're trying to find how many years, so we don't need to change it, so it's all good. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to want to do is probably change this percent into its decimal form. So remember, 2.5 and percent means over 100, and if you put that into your calculator, 2.5 divided by 100, you're going to get 0.025. So that's our new decimal interest rate. We still have our unknown, and we have our principal, which is all going to be equal to $200. Okay, so now we can simplify this bit over here, and you'll get 105 if you put that into your calculator, times the unknown equals 200. Okay, and then we're going to take the same approach we did last time, so we're going to divide both sides by 105. These two cancel out because it's the same thing as 1. And then we're left with this, which is going to be the number of years, is going to be the same thing as 200 divided by 105. So 200 over 105, putting that in your calculator gives you 1.9047, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the question specifically asks how many years, so you could figure out how many months exactly, but remember this only gets paid out once a year, so the answer really should be 2, because they don't really get paid every 1.9 years, they only get paid every 2 years. So at the end of 2 years, they'll have technically more than $200, but they will only get that $200 after they've been held for that 2 years, if that makes sense. So it's an important thing to remember here with your simple interest, that it's not going to get paid every month, every day. You have to remember that it's getting paid per annum. So you're going to have to leave this in simple interest in its true years form. If it was getting paid every month, then you would probably say, 1 year and, 0.9 of a year would probably be around, December. So you probably say 1 year and 11 months. But in this case, we can't say that because it gets paid every year. So we have to say 2. Okay, so question 15, our last question. Tool used a credit card to buy a netbook computer for $799 and some extra stuff for $246. She pays off the debt in 30 days. The credit card charges 22% per annum, simple interest daily. Quite an expensive credit card. Find the simple interest charged and how much she'll pay after 30 days. So I'm assuming that this simple interest charged here means every day, because you're getting paid there. The simple interest is getting charged daily. I don't know why they gave us 2 expenses here. I don't know why they wouldn't have just plus them together. So that's easy. We just have to plus them. But straight away, I can already tell that this 22% per annum daily is going to be a problem, because we have one time measurement in days and the interest rate time measurement in years. So that's going to be a bit of an issue for us. So let's get stuck into finding the simple interest charge. I'm going to assume this means for the day. So the first thing we're going to do is find out how much she actually borrowed. So $799 plus $246 in your calculator, that's going to give you a total of $1,045 borrowed. So it's going to be our P, our principal. So now we want to try and find our R, which is going to be our rate. So we know that that's 22% per annum. And then the time period, so I'm going to assume that this is for 1 day. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and find just the interest that she's going to have to pay at the end of this. So she's going to be going for 30 days, okay? And that's all going to equal the total simple interest. So that's going to be our N. But as we can see, we've got to check that these are in the same unit. So this 22% per annum and this 30 days are not in the same unit. So we're going to have to change one of them. Because I like working with things in per annum, I'm going to choose to change this into years, the 30 days into years. Have a think about it for a second. How many days are there in a year? Now the textbook might say that there's 365.25, so we'll put that in as well. So 365.25 days in a year, because remember we're accounting for those leap years. So we're trying to find how many years is 30 days. So 30 divided by 365.25 is going to be the same as years. It's going to be in the years unit now instead of days. 0.082136. Okay, probably going to want to round that off a little bit, but anyway, does this look like it makes sense? So we know that 30 days is a lot less than a year, so it looks like it's going to be a lot less than a year, saying here that it's roughly 8% of a year, which sounds somewhat right. So this here is 30 days in years. So now we have our interest rate in years and we have our time period, or our N, in years as well. So to find the total interest, I can simply multiply across to get what my interest is equal to. But remember, first we want to change our 22% into our decimal form. So we do that in the same way we did before. So we're going to divide by 100 and we get 0.22. So our total answer is going to be the same thing as 1045 times 0.22 times 0.08. And we'll round it to 2 as well. So that total interest that she's going to pay, just the interest, not the money that she initially has to pay back, is going to be equal to $18.85. Now the textbook might be slightly different because they might have decided to use 365 only, but this I'm going to say is more correct because it somewhat accounts for leap years as well. We now know that our total interest for this 30-day period is going to be $18.85. Then for question B, which is going to be how much will she have to pay after 30 days, that's simply going to be whatever her original cost was plus just the $18.85 of interest. So we know that number from before. That's going to be the same thing as our principal, which was simply $1,045. So adding those two together, you're going to get a total of $1,063.85.